Former Queensland Deputy Premier Jackie Trad has been cleared of all criminal offences over the recruitment of a principal at a Brisbane high school. She joins me now with this exclusive interview, former Queensland Deputy Premier Jackie Trad. Jackie Trad, do you feel vindicated tonight?
Good evening, Peter, and good evening to all your audience. Today's come at a great relief to me and my family, and it just means that I can fully focus on the enormous task ahead of me, and that is to make sure that I win the seat of South Brisbane. And the
seat of South Brisbane, yep, Jackie, is a difficult one because you've got a very strong Greens candidate there, and of course you've also got, an election where there's a lot on the table. Are you confident that you can win South Brisbane?
Well, Peter, I've never been confident or taken my community for granted. Every election, no matter whether you're a sitting MP or a new candidate, it is absolutely incumbent on me and all candidates to get out there and make the case. Ultimately, it's in the hands of the people, and I have never taken any election for granted. That's what I'll be doing at this election, and certainly there's been a lot of mudslinging by the LNP, and and what we've seen today in terms of the CCC clearing me of all wrongdoing is that mudslinging has just got to stop. I mean, the CCC in their report today make a recommendation that the government should consider making it an offence to use complaints in the way that the LNP have on this matter as a political issue in the lead up to a state election. Now, I think that we should give serious consideration to that because we do know that it has an impact, it has an effect. And quite frankly, what we need to be talking about this election is the economic recovery. It's going to be enormous, it's going to be challenging, but we have to do it, and we have to do it for Queenslanders.
You stepped down from Cabinet pending these allegations, and of course you also had the allegations, and you were subsequently cleared by the CCC on the purchase of a house by your husband. Have you spoken to the Premier tonight? Are you likely to be drafted back into Cabinet as a result of being cleared of this particular charge?
Peter, I'm not looking to be drafted back into Cabinet. My number one priority now is to get out there and campaign in my community. I'm sure, like many people who are tuning in tonight, people in my community have been really hard hit by the economic downturn. There's a lot of young workers, there's a lot of women workers, and as we know, they've been particularly hard hit by the economic crisis caused by coronavirus. So my number one responsibility is to these people in my community who need a strong representative, who need someone out there questioning whether or not it's good sense to actually turn off the tap when it comes to JobKeeper. I've spoken to many small businesses in my community. They don't know how they're going to keep people on the payroll once JobKeeper finishes, and these are the concerns that I'm going to be advocating for, and advocating quite strongly in the interests of my community.
Jackie, the report by the CCC was fairly scathing of a number of public servants in relation to this particular matter. I mean, they were heavily criticised. Do you believe that criticism was fair?
I think the report speaks for itself, Peter. It's quite a lengthy report. As you know, it's taken more than 6 months of investigation, including the CCC using their coercive powers in order to gather that evidence, gather all of the facts. So I think the report speaks for itself. And these matters, as you know, have all been sent off to the responsible head of the public service for them to consider these findings, and they'll make those conclusions. I will say this just in relation to the Department of Education. I think it's fair that people read this report and they wonder how these mistakes happened. But I do also want to say that to all Queenslanders out there, This is an agency that is responsible for educating hundreds of thousands of kids each and every year. They've certainly stepped up, and my kids have been through the state school system at a primary level, and you know, the education system is made up of hard-working principals and teachers and teacher aides and cleaners, and all of these people need to be very proud of the job that they do.
If I could just go to the report, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this particular part of it because it is important and it is relevant. According to the panel chair, the person who chaired the committee that ultimately determined who actually got the job at that particular school, the decision not to appoint Tracy Cook, who was overlooked, was impacted by the meeting that occurred with the Deputy Premier. If the process of meeting with the Deputy Premier had not occurred, Principal A, which is Cook, would likely be the principal. How do you react to that?
Well, Peter also in the report at a number of instances, and even today during the chair of the CCC's media conference, his press conference today, he does outline that during every stage of this process, I was misled. Now, the panel chair may have had a view, but the panel chair, as the report outlines, had reservations in relation to appointments very first up. So I think the report speaks for itself. The panel chair also said that I provided no feedback in relation to that meeting, and that it was the panel chair's view that the decision not to appoint Principal A was made by someone else in the department. So they're the facts, and they're in the report, and the report goes into great detail in relation to that. But as I said, Peter, the CCC has cleared me of all wrongdoing, and the matters that I refer to, my statements in relation to this matter from day one have been truthful, and that's what's been clear in terms of the CCC's report today.
All right, before I let you go, the Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, was scathing earlier in the week in her criticism of Scott Morrison and several cabinet ministers over the way in which they were critical of her and the fact that the borders were not reopened earlier than what they believe they should have. Do you believe the Premier has handled the coronavirus crisis well?
Absolutely, Peter. I have been talking to a lot of people in my community, and the number one thing they raise is the contrast in how Queensland has responded, and particularly the Premier's leadership, the Deputy Premier's leadership, and particularly as Health Minister, and the Chief Health Officer. I mean, the number one thing that people say to me is, thank God we're in Queensland. It's been handled so well. And I think considering the number of cases that have come, that have been tested positive in Victoria, I think a lot of people are worried about that. I mean, we've had the first case confirmed in Northern Territory, and that was someone who came from Victoria to the Northern Territory. So it is so important that we keep this great performance happening, that we keep this great track record happening, because the last thing that businesses, that workers, that our health system needs is a second wave of coronavirus breaking out in Queensland, and that's what we must avoid.
Jackie Trad, really appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for joining us on Sky News across Australia.
Thanks, Peter.